From McGregor's notorious claims about USADA to Dana White's deafening silence on the MMA champ's latest hiccup, it seems like the UFC's refusing to speak out about McGregor's recent controversy. Here's why. Now, as you all know, the former UFC featherweight champion has been MIA from the MMA scene and USADA's testing pool for quite some time now. Fans last saw him in all his glory way back in 2021. That was when he competed for the last time in the octagon, before he suffered a pretty nasty leg injury against Dustin Poirier. His injury then caused a first-round technical knockout defeat for the fighter, and the rest is, well, history. However, in a surprising turn of events, McGregor is now expected to make a comeback to the octagon.
It's of Gunnar Nelson, but just a great fluidity with Conor McGregor, and he continues to land upstairs on Max Holloway.
And that unpredictable nature of his attack.
Stalking his opponent. Brando looks hurt. This could be the end.
Big left.
This could be an early stoppage.
McGregor comes in
for McGregor. This could be it.
That is it. It is all over. Conor.
And you best believe fans can hardly contain their excitement. I mean, can you blame them? It's been a long time coming. For now, there's not a lot of details available about his future bout, but this unconfirmed showdown with Michael Chandler seems to be promising enough for McGregor to make his comeback. Now, while fans are over the moon that they'll see the notorious back in action again, there's one teeny tiny problem. Conor needs to go through a series of tests to declare him fit enough before the comeback, and by the looks of it, he's in no rush to return to the testing pool. You see, the UFC has some strict policies when it comes to drug testing, and they don't really care if the fighter in question's a rookie or a champion. The rules stay the same for all, and every athlete gets tested for drugs. Since 2015, the UFC has been cooperating with the US's biggest anti-doping agency called the USADA, which tests UFC fighters for substances like anabolic steroids, growth hormones, estrogen blockers, and narcotics. Basically, we're talking any kind of performance-enhancing drug that might give an unfair advantage to a fighter. The USADA tries its best to screen it in order to ensure a fighter is fit for a bout. Now, obviously, since every fighter goes through this, it makes sense for Conor to undergo a series of tests for his comeback. After all, he's been out of the game for a while now, so the organization's obviously worried if the Notorious has succumbed to the charm of PEDs. But this is where the whole rift started. You see, Conor wants to come out of retirement, but for that to happen, he needs to be cleared by the USADA. That's pretty easy to understand, right? Now, the thing is, McGregor is clearly not happy with the situation. Why? Let me break it down. If Conor does go through the testing pool, it's gonna take him at least 6 months worth of testing, just so he's able to go up against his next opponent. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if I had to wait 6 more months to make a comeback, I'd be pissed too. After all, according to the former featherweight champion, Conor's already been in talks with the USADA, and they assured him that if he had 2 clean tests, he'd be cleared to fight. However, the USADA soon went back on their word and claimed that Conor's claims of waltzing right back into the octagon are entirely bogus. Because if you go back to 2016, Brock Lesnar tried to pull the same con job. However, unfortunately for him, he still flunked his drug test. So who's to say that Conor might not have the same fate too? Now, the issue is, while the former UFC champ thought it'd be a one-and-done kind of deal between him and the USADA, the anti-doping agency denied everything and said that they never had a meeting set up with Conor or anything like that. In fact, they claimed they hadn't even heard of his retirement. So all of this was news to them. However, they also made it clear that even if Conor did decide to make a comeback, he would have to undergo the same process every other fighter goes through, and would have to be available for 6 months worth of testing. In addition to 2 negative tests, obviously this was not on Conor's agenda following his comeback, and soon he took his frustrations to Twitter. In a slew of hateful comments against the USADA, the Irishman tweeted that the USADA is going in the bin. Yikes. Not the kind of stuff you want to be putting out there if you ever want to fight again, Conor. But let's hear the guy out for a second. This man went through one of the most brutal injuries of his career, took an early retirement because of it, made a deal with the devil to avoid unnecessary testing, only to be called a liar at the end? Make it make sense. Cause as far as he's concerned, Conor's never lied once. In fact, according to him, he's never tested positive for any PED. Plus, he's got over 70 clean tests under the program. So for the agency to pin this on him and make it seem like he's lying is just ridiculous. He further tweeted that he will no longer be scapegoated by this garbage organization because even if you take a look at his previous records, in 2021, McGregor was tested a total of 16 times by the anti-doping agency and never once had any issues. So for him, he was just relying on his credibility as an honest fighter, hoping to get a one-time exception, just so he could return to the octagon. However, it seems like there's no end in sight for this feud, and even Dana White is awfully quiet about it all. Cause here's the thing, as president of the UFC, Dana obviously has some say in how his fighters get treated, right? Wrong, because last I checked, Dana's a huge fan of the USADA to the point that he firmly believes what they're doing is right, regardless of how ridiculous it might seem. Now, the crux of Conor's controversy is not the fact that he's supposed to undergo a testing pool for his comeback. It's the fact that he's been labeled as a liar that's made him upset. Plus, let's not forget that amidst this chaos and Conor's rant on Twitter, Dana has distanced himself away from the MMA champ. After the Irishman called the USADA garbage organization, media outlets obviously turned to White for a comment on the matter, and Dana being Dana, he did what he does best. While speaking at UFC 268's post-fight press conference, a couple of people asked what he thought about Conor's comments on USADA. White swiftly took the mic away and said, "Have you ever heard of Jeff Nowitzki? Ask him these questions. I don't give a S about any of that stuff anymore." Because as far as Dana's concerned, he's not responsible for the drug testing situation anymore, since he doesn't know anything about it, so he'd rather leave it to the experts who'll handle it. In fact, he even urged the guys to call Jeff up and interview him about it, which really says a lot about how Dana has lost his cool with McGregor's controversy. Now, in case you didn't know, Jeff is UFC's Senior Vice President of Athlete Health and Performance, which means that according to the promotion's hierarchy, he's the guy who deals with stuff that pertains to athletes and their standardized drug tests. Now, so far, Jeff hasn't said anything about Conor's status in USADA's testing pool yet, but if the Notorious wants to make a comeback this year, he will need to register for the testing pool as soon as possible, or otherwise, Conor might just throw his return to the octagon away into jeopardy. That's all for everything about Conor McGregor's USADA controversy.